Thank you, Val. Is this about the right height? I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Kim Cameron. And Kim has many distinguished titles. He is the William Russell Kelly Professor Emeritus of Business Administration at the university's Ross School of Business. For those of us who are on the tour, it's all those orange-clad buildings that we drove by a couple times today. He also is Professor Emeritus of Higher Education in the School of Education. He's the co-founder of an amazing center. It's the Center for Positive Organizations at the U of M. And he has extensive higher ed experience as well. He's been a dean at the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University. Kim consults with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 500 companies, and he's recognized as among the top 10 organizational scholars in the world. So we feel really special that he agreed to talk to us tonight. His current research focuses on virtuousness in organizations, including gratitude, kindness, forgiveness, and compassion, and their relationship to performance. I personally had an opportunity to benefit from Kim's wisdom when I was still working at the university and I was in a leadership program. And to say that he changed the way that I thought about organizations and the world of work is really an understatement. So I hope that you enjoy what we are here to learn. And thank you, Kim. We really appreciate it. Welcome.
Well, I am flattered and delighted to be invited to come. Thank you, Susan, for this wonderful opportunity. And Alan, Rob, and Mike, and others, Pat, Cindy, who've made this possible. What I'd like to do this evening is to share with you what gets me up every morning as a faculty member and as a person doing research. Oops.
Where's
Drew? I don't think I touched anything. Except for mine. Drew is a student at the University of Michigan Dearborn, majoring in business. The world revolves around technology. Well, let me start with this slide. It's not unusual for me to encounter executives, NFL coaches, Army generals, and so on, who say to me, Cameron, you're trying to talk to us about positive things. Frankly, that makes us angry. Because we have profitability goals, we've got stock price pressures, we've got quality issues, we've got engagement concerns with our employees. I mean, you're just telling us, sing a happy tune, think happy thoughts, just put a smile on your face, and everything's going to be okay. It's not okay. In fact, it's a deflection from what we really have to pay attention to and for what we're held accountable. So we call this toxic positivity. Well, what I'd like to do is to make the case that you ignore this, that is, this meaning positive practices, positive leadership, positive cultures, at your peril. The data is very clear that what grandmother's advice was all about, it really works. Being kind, being grateful, being compassionate, forgiving. I mean, those things that we say, that's not really rigorous science. I want to try to make the case that it is and it's important. So, my goal is to make the empirical case. We use research. I'm going to share with you a lot of research. That is, by the way, only a sample of what's available. The sample is, the argument is, if you practice positive behavior, and create a positive culture, you not only do well, but you do good. And without having you be able to walk out of this room having something to do about this, I will have failed. So I'm going to try to give you a few hints of many options where you could say, you know what, that might be something I could do. So criteria for what I'm going to talk about is threefold. One is there has to be empirical evidence that proves what I say is true. If you question that, I'd like to have you stop me, and we'll dive more into it. Second is there has to be a theory that explains why it works. That's what theories do. So if you have a headache and I give you an aspirin, fix for your headache, well, we know why that works. There's a theory. So there has to be, why does this work? Explanation. And finally, I either have to have done this or helped an organization do it, so I know there's practical utility. If you question any of those criteria, please stop me. We will dive more deeply. Here's the overall goal. I would like to try, when you leave here, to have you have identified a 1% improvement or 1% change. Now, 1% is enough. It'll be worth the time. For example, if you get in an airplane, you go around the world. Let's say you're in Washington, D.C. You go around the world, you're off 1 degree. You end up south of Atlanta, north of Bangor, Maine. It does not take much change to put you in a very different place. So 1%, stick it with it for 3 weeks. You will be in a very different place. That's the goal, and I'll try to help you with that. Okay, think at the top of this slide of the line as representative of a deviance continuum. Now, in English, the word deviance has a negative connotation. If I call you a deviant, that's normally a criticism. But you can think of negative deviance, but you can also think of positive deviance, aberration from the norm, only on the positive side. Well, there are several important implications of thinking of a continuum as both positive and negative. For example, think of physical health. 90% of all medical research focuses on the gap between the left-hand side and the middle. Once I'm healthy, once I'm doing just fine, they stop paying attention. I mean, I get a physical exam once a year, but the only reason I do it is to keep me away from the left-hand side of that continuum. Psychologically, it's worse. 95% of all psychological research focuses on the gap between the left-hand side and the middle. So on the left-hand side is depression, anxiety, stress, PTSD, and so on. That dominates us. I was reading in the newspaper yesterday, 86% of young people, we call them Generation Z, will face some kind of psychological or emotional crisis. I mean, almost everybody. It's so much different than it used to be. And the explanations are, of course, numerous. But anyway, on the right-hand side, there is positively deviant physical health. It's the ability to do 400 push-ups, run an Ironman competition. 5% for men, 5% body fat. For women, 15% body fat. I mean, somebody quite different than me. Well, there's a little research on that, not much. Psychologically, there was a book written years ago called Flow, which describes a condition you're so immersed in a task you care about, you lose track of time, you lose track of physiological needs. If you put electrodes on your brain, you're using more of your brain capacity than normal. It's hyper. It's not zoning out in front of the screen, it's the opposite. Well, there's a little research on that, not much. We don't pay much attention to the right-hand side of the continuum. Organizations are very similar. If we're not making money, if we don't have membership, people are dissatisfied, customers are leaving, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure we move to the middle of that curve. We're acceptable, we're making money, we're profitable, customers are satisfied, everything's fine. But on the right-hand side, there is something positively deep, extraordinary, spectacular, better than we expected. We have organizations that have exceeded industry average by a factor of 5, much better than anybody could have predicted. Well, that's what positive leadership is all about. Trying to help organizations and individuals, leaders, become spectacular, much better than expected. So I'm referring to the left-hand side as deficit gaps, the right-hand side as abundance gaps. Now, there's nothing magic about those words. But here's the most important slide. If you focus on abundance gaps, you unleash something called the heliotropic effect. Now, do you know what the heliotropic effect is? You do, you just don't know anything. If I put a plant in the window, over time it will lean toward the light, which is an example of the heliotropic effect, which is defined as follows. Every living system, literally from single-cell organisms to complex human systems, every living system is inclined toward the light or toward life-giving energy. See, Einstein was the one that said light is simply nature's way of distributing positive energy, life-giving energy. That's what light is. Over time, everything will lean toward the light. You put a seed in the ground, it will grow toward the light. Photosynthesis, life happens only in the presence of light, and so on. Okay. If that's true, if all human beings flourish in the presence of positive, life-giving energy, and languish in the presence of negative, life-depleting energy, it matters. It has big implications. So what I want to do just briefly, I'm going to share only a very small percentage of the evidence. I want to show you just a few studies to try to make that case. So this research was done here at Michigan. It's been replicated multiple times. In this study, a physician puts a drop of liquid at the bottom of your nostril in which there's cold virus. They call it rhinovirus. You breathe in the virus. Some people get sick. Some people don't. And the question is, well, how do you predict who succumbs to the virus versus who's resilient? Well, it turns out the temperature at the back of your throat, where your esophagus meets your nasal passages, a half a degree difference in that temperature causes you to succumb to the virus versus be resilient. And your emotional state affects the temperature. Happy, optimistic, positive, virtuous people, kind, compassionate, get sick significantly less often, less than half as often as normal people, not to mention depressed, angry, cynical people. But the classic study that illustrates that phenomenon is called the nun study. It's a study of 678 Catholic nuns living in a convent. Now, this was originally designed to do Alzheimer's disease studies because these women were between the age of 75 and 104, and some of them had Alzheimer's disease. Let's see, they have the same diet, same regimen, same environment. You can control for a lot of potential causal factors. Well, there was a side finding that emerged in that study that was especially interesting to me, and here it is. They found that journals or diaries of 180 of those women when they entered the convent 60 years before. Some of these women were saying things like this in their journal. This is the culmination of my life's dream. I'm so happy to end of the order. This is such a blessing. Some were saying this is going to be a challenge, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be a real sacrifice, but I'm committed, I'm going to follow through. Difference? They simply put nuns in two groups depending on which type of journal they were keeping. Then the study was, they simply counted the number of nuns alive in each group. Now these numbers aren't precise, but they're very close. They represent the difference. Of the 90 nuns in the first group, 70 were alive. Of the 90 nuns in the second group, 10 were alive. And in every decade, there was a significant difference in mortality rates. On the average, those in the first group lived 11 years longer than those in the second group. It's heliotropic. It affects human beings. Here's some other evidence. Excuse me. So this study's been done multiple times. So let's say we have a group of students. Let's say you're there. And I say to you, and you're in my class, I say to you, students in my class, you are required to keep, my wife's going to tell me if I'm okay. Are you okay? Oh, bless your heart. I'm great. So thank you so much. You're terrific. So you folks are going to keep a journal, and you have to write in your journal every day. But you're required to write in your journal every day 3 things for which you're grateful, or write down the best things that happened to your day. You folks write down 3 events, 3 interactions, 3 problems you faced. We're going to do that for a semester. At the end of the semester, I'm going to give all of you a set of little exams. Number 1 is I'm going to give all of you a flu shot. Excuse me. I'll give you a flu shot, then 7 days later, I'm going to test for the number of antibodies in your system. You are going to be healthier in 7 days than are you. Now, the only difference is this is a gratitude journal. This is putting yourself in a gratitude mindset once a day for a short amount of time. I give you, for example, a mental acuity task. What's that? You have to remember information. You have to memorize information. You have to come up with some sophisticated procedure rules and complex data. These folks will have more mental acuity than these folks. Grade point average will be higher in this group than in this group. I give you a creativity task. What's that? Well, think of all the things you can use this for. Or a ping pong ball. Or a brick. More ideas in this group, larger variety of ideas in this group. It's called mental flexibility. Here, here. I mean, this is a gratitude. This is not a big, significant intervention. I've got acts of kindness there also. I'll show you more about that. Here's what I'd like to ask you to do. At your table, I'll give you less than 3 minutes. I'll give you 2 minutes. I'm going to ask you to simply share with one another how you practice or capitalize on or have seen people practice gratitude as an intervention. What do you do to capitalize on gratitude as an intervention in your back home organization, in your family, in your former organization, whatever? The reason we're going to do this is we're going to find some 1% ideas, not sophisticated things. Some of you are going to say very simple things. I'm going to say, man, I could do that. It's just going to give us some options. All right, I'm going to time you 2 minutes. Ready, set, go.
I sign my email thanks most of the time. It's just easy because I just want to say best, when I say cordially, I say thanks. Usually it's got something to do with writing them about something that I'm sharing and something like that. So I'm glad that they're out there.
Get something.
Yeah, but it's not. I mean, I don't do it. I don't think that. Anyway, that's always one thing.
And now I can't remember her name, but Minnesota's president.
Diane.
I liked what she said about shouting out or recognizing volunteers. And not just somebody else was talking about it saying, oh yeah, the best volunteer ever. No, she's just saying any volunteer. That's just recognize somebody.
She does that.
Yeah, and to me that's a wonderful idea. It's like not saying, oh yeah, because you did so much. Just saying, oh, that's easy. You add value.
I chose to tip our driver today on the bus as I was going out because he worked.
That was good.
And he was very nice. I learned that from my wife as well on the East Coast, where tipping people is so valuable. Gets people on it. I'll never see this guy again.
No, but that's good.
I appreciate what you did for us.
Yep.
You're absolutely right, and I didn't think of it because I'm so used to being a state institution. I thought it's probably a state employee and therefore it can't accept it. I didn't think that's fabulous. Thank you for doing that.
I always
Okay, that's 2 minutes. Not long. Would any of you be willing now to report on what you just heard in your team? What 1% practices did you say, hey, that was interesting? Anybody willing to share?
Oh, sure.
Somebody's gonna start, right?
So in our organization, we recognize if Rachel brought in Lois, as a new member, Lois writes, Rachel brought me in. An email is sent to the recruiter saying, thank you so much for sharing our organization with, and as a benefit, I will extend your membership for 1 year.
That's terrific.
And that's all.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you, thank you. Others? Please.
We really talked about sending thank you notes, and literally on paper thank you notes for people who do something extraordinary, out of the ordinary. We also talked about volunteer awards and talked about sending emails like right away to thank someone for stepping up and doing something different, not even waiting, but just getting home and saying something, say thank you, that's great.
Terrific. The reason this is all important, and thank you for those two wonderful ideas, only 10% of the people say thank you to somebody every day, and 60% never do. I'll walk off an airplane once in a while, and a flight attendant will say, gee, you're nice. I'm not nice, I just said thank you when they came and picked up my order. Class. Most people don't. These folks are just carry away our plates. I don't think we say thanks to them. Small things, oh my goodness, these are tiny. Well, let me show you some of the things I see in organizations. I know a person in an organization who has 2,000 employees. Every employee receives a journal or a notebook. And they simply said, this is your gratitude journal. You want everybody keeping a gratitude journal. Your children ought to have a gratitude journal. Gratitude cards get sent all the time. You know about that kind of thing. I won't share more. I have a friend who's a CEO of an organization, wanted to turn it around, and so he decided to implement a bunch of 1% positive practices, one of which was he assigned all of his employees, and again, a couple of thousand folks. Every employee was assigned to positively embarrass somebody every day. What does that mean? That means compliment somebody in front of somebody else who cares. He had several people come to him and say, oh, that's kind of silly, it's kind of superficial, it's kind of uncomfortable. He said, I don't care. If you do that, you're going to forget about the fact we lost $100 million last year, which they did. And you're going to unlock potential. You're going to unlock confidence. You're going to have people start feeling better about themselves and about the organization. And sure enough, $90 million turnaround in 12 months. I can, on the one hand, say, Sue, you're doing such a great job. You're amazing. In addition to that, I can write a letter to Sue's family, in which I say, look, you've got to be so proud of your mom, your spouse, your daughter. She is incredible. She's so important to this organization. She's making such a difference. You can't believe the contribution that she's making. We just are so grateful that you've lended the time and talents of your daughter, your spouse. So she not only hears it from me, now she hears it from the most important people in her life. I mean, that takes you 5 minutes, but big impact, you know. Or every time we run an event in a business school, we put up a gratitude wall. This is a picture of a gratitude wall in a business school. So there are envelopes, and the name of every attendee is on one of those envelopes. There are cards. You just put a little note in an envelope if you want to. We start every meeting trying to start with positives. All right, 15 seconds. Is there anything on business or anything that you heard from your colleagues that you say to yourself, that could be one for me? You've got 15 seconds.
Can I ask a question first? And to communicate with families, is this where you know the family? Or have you made sure that the family is aware that the person is doing this? I was worried about the confidentiality of somebody doing something that their family didn't know. Maybe they didn't want them to know.
I hadn't thought about that somebody's working for an organization in secret. I've not thought about that. But if that's the case, then I'm going to make a mistake because my intent is I want to be proud of this person. She is amazing, and we're making such progress with her. Just be conscious that she's spectacular. That's what I'd like to do. But if it becomes a negative, then it's not the way.
But how would you know if it's a positive or negative?
I probably wouldn't, although I would assume that I know most of my employees well enough to know about their families. It's one of the
So you're talking in a situation where you're the boss or the manager, and you're talking about your employee. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm curious, when a boss tells an employee to do this once a day, okay, most of us could do that. And I understand that the point of that is to make the person who's being thanked proud and feel good. Is it part of your argument that it also actually increases the feelings of gratitude among the people who are doing this?
Absolutely. Changes the whole culture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good news. Here's why it works. Here's a theory. So I have a friend who works in an organization, they study heart rhythms. So at the top, that's your heart rhythm when you're upset, frustrated, angry. Bottom, that's your heart rhythm when you're in a gratitude, appreciative, or virtuous condition, kindness, forgiveness, and so it does the same thing. It's the same pattern. Well, now you know why after 60 years, some nuns are alive and some nuns are dead. Your heart looks better, it's more rhythmic. And you don't control this. You don't say, change. Not going to happen. It's heliotropic. It's part of the human condition. Here's a study of mindset. This is an easy study to do. You could do it more sophisticated and put people in a formal meditation program, but this is easy. In this study, the individuals are simply asked to ponder, contemplate a positive, optimistic future versus a neutral or negative future. So now I have in a mindset, I'm just going to do a scan of your brain. It's called a PET scan. Turns out, more areas of your brain are activated in a positive state. Let's see. On the top. More areas of your brain are activated in a positive state. And those activated are activated to a greater extent. You literally are smarter. That's why students do better in terms of grade. This is a study of coherence. In your body, you've got rhythms. Heart rhythms, brain rhythms, muscle twitch rhythms, nervous system rhythms. When everything is perfectly aligned, that's called coherence. And you can measure ideal coherence at 0.1 hertz. Don't know why that's the measure, that's the measure. All right, the top, that's when you're upset, frustrated, angry. And on the right-hand side, that's the measure. In the middle, that's when you're asleep. On the right-hand side, that's the measure. The bottom, that's when you're in a gratitude or appreciation or appreciative or a virtuous condition. On the right-hand side, you are perfect. You cannot get better than when you're in a virtuous condition. Physiologically, that's your peak. I have a friend who studies vagal tone. Now, in your body, your vagus nerve is the most important nerve in your body. It goes in the back of your brainstem down on your heart. That controls internal organs, controls your heart rhythms, and so on. So I have a friend who simply induces positive, virtuous state, and then measures what's called vagal tone. And this little diagram simply shows a significant improvement over time in vagal tone, nervous system health, and therefore long-term well-being and even mortality rates. And then this last one, this is a heart disease study done here. In this study, heart disease patients were asked to keep a journal. Half the patients were asked to keep a journal, gratitude journal, writing the journal every day for 8 weeks. The other half did not keep a journal. At the end of the 8 weeks, they simply measured heart health. Those people keeping a gratitude journal not only had not deteriorated, their hearts had actually healed significantly, observably so. That is individuals, human beings, are inherently focused on, flourish in, is life-giving to individuals who are in a positive and virtuous state. Here's one other study. This is a study of children ages 3 months up on the left to 8 months up on the right. In this study, you simply put a child on a caregiver's lap, have them watch a puppet show for maybe 20 seconds. So a puppet tries to walk across the stage, tries to climb a hill, tries to open a box. Then you have 2 other puppets. One puppet tries to help, support, encourage. The other puppet tries to hinder. Puts a block up, you can't make it up the hill. Jumps on the box, you can't open the box. Then at the end of 20 or 30 seconds, you bring these 2 puppets out, put it in front of the child, and the child can select whichever puppet he or she wants to play with. About 90% of the time, the child selects the puppet that tries to help rather than tries to hinder. From the time you are 3 months old, long before you learn language, long before you're socialized, there is an inherent tendency in all human beings toward the positive, flourishing and reproducing the positive, as opposed to the reverse. Okay. If you are significantly overweight, the probability of dying early is 20%. If you are an excessive drinker, probability of dying early, 30%. All the MBA students want to know what excessive is. If you are a smoker, probability of dying early is 50%. I just heard yesterday or 2 days ago on the radio that smoking marijuana increases that by a factor of 6. If you are in poor social relationships, the probability of dying early is 70%. That is, social relationships trump these physiological factors that capture so much of our attention. Well, and by the way, there's lots of data, lots of evidence that suggests that social relationships are critical factors. I'll put an example. The longest study I know that's been done in social sciences was started in 1938, a class at Harvard. They added a class of vassar, so they had male and female. Excuse me. That study they have these individuals interviewed and tracked every 2 years since 1938, measuring everything you can imagine, health indicators, success in life indicators, family success indicators, and so on. There have been 3 books written on this study. The last book that was written, excuse me, at the conclusion of the book, it simply summarized the following. Social relationships are far more important than any other factor on that list. I mean, it's so much more important than any other factor, it almost doesn't matter what else you measure. And in fact, the last sentence in the last book was something like, life is dependent on love, full stop. All right. Why is that? Well, we normally say, well, it's easy, Cameron, because I'm getting my needs met. It feels good to be liked, much better than not liked. It's much better to be engaged and have people feel like I'm important than not. I mean, come on, that's easy to explain. Except that's not the answer. The answer is as follows, and very quickly. The study was done here at Michigan. A colleague in the psychology department took entering freshmen, asked them to identify their goals for the year. Now, everybody has lots of goals, but you categorize the goals into 2 types. One type was called contribution goals. I want to make a difference. I want to have something get better because what I'm doing. The other kind of goal is called achievement goals. I want to get good grades. I want a girlfriend. I want to be popular, and so on. She put people in 2 groups depending on which type of goal is dominant. Then the study was she simply followed these students for 1 year, 1 academic year, measuring, for example, how well they get along with roommates, social factors, popularity issues. She measured physical factors. How many times I got headaches, missed class, got the flu, got COVID, whatever. Academic, cognitive factors, what grade point average was, what your test scores were at the end of each semester. On every single dimension. Contribution goals trumped achievement goals in predicting success. They did better academically, they did better physically, they did better socially. When contribution goals was the major focus. That's confirmed by a study of kidney dialysis patients. Excuse me. These people are hooked up to a kidney dialysis machine, can't go anywhere. They were measured on two factors. One is, to what extent are you making a difference in somebody else's life, contributing, helping, assisting somebody else. The other factor is, to what extent are you being supported and loved and cared for. The second factor was the first factor was far more predictive, the extent to which they were contributing, of health recovery than the second factor. That's confirmed by this study of multiple sclerosis patients, more carefully designed. Half of these patients were assigned to receive a phone call once a week from somebody expressing love, support, and concern. The other half of these people were assigned to place a phone call to somebody else expressing love, support, and concern. 2 years later, they measured well-being, self-efficacy, physical activity, hope, depression. 8-fold difference. Those people who placed the phone call were 8 times healthier than those people who received the phone call. Contribution is the key. And then there's, even as at the genetic level, this is a study just this last year, in which people were given an opportunity to in one of 3 conditions. One is identify some kind act to another human being. Be kind in general. Third, be kind to yourself. Then they simply measured, what happened over time. As it turns out, being kind to another human being at the genetic level, that which, by the way, controls heart rhythms and a bunch of things. Significant improvement. All right. The whole point about that is human beings flourish or incline toward the positive. All right. Let me just do this. I want to give you some examples of what I've seen done in organizations. One of them is, in terms of contribution, one of them is simply mentor, coach. When somebody needs help, I'm going to help. Another is the person in charge of faculty support in the business school learned about this. So when she gives awards, and she does a lot, a certificate, a chance to have a little statue on your desk or whatever, she always gives one of those to somebody who's outstanding, but then she always gives a second one. And the person receiving the reward can give that to somebody else. She doesn't know who it is, but the person receiving the award does. So anytime anybody ever achieves performance, they get a chance to give an award. I think it's a clever idea. Zingerman's, I'll tell you this. Zingerman's is a delicatessen here. It's well known. Every week they have a meeting, a staff meeting. So let's assume you're working in Zingerman's, a real dishwasher and a greeter and a sandwich maker and so on. You get together. We have a whiteboard with a bunch of items on it. How many tips do we get this week? How many dishes do we break this week? How many times do we get a compliment in terms of the cleanliness of a restaurant? And so on. You're in charge of line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and so on. So you get together and we have a report. How many tips do we get this week? But the really important part is, here's my plan to improve that number next week. Here's a way to surprise and delight customers, just a little way. Here's how many dishes we broke. Here's my idea for improving safety in the kitchen, just a little bit. So every single employee, every week, has a teeny tiny contribution to make. I just think Zingerman can survive. I'm a frequent flyer on Delta, like many of you. What does Delta give me for being a loyal flyer? They give me certificates, which I can hand to a Delta employee. So if somebody, a flight attendant or a gate agent or baggage handler, does something wonderful, I give them a certificate, which is points in the bank, it's recognition that makes them eligible for corporate-wide award and so on. I get hugs, I get tears, it's a wonderful experience for me. If you want loyal flyers, what do? Give them a chance to contribute. I think Delta gets it right. And so on. There are a bunch of others. One of my daughters, one of my children, is an attorney. She figured this out. She's got a 4-year-old who's quite a handful. His name is Valor. She says, Valor, clean up your mess. No chance. He will not do it. Valor, take your dishes to the sink. If she says, Valor, would you do me a favor? Would you take your little toy train and put it over in that box? Would you do that for me? Every time. That is, people will respond to, would you please help me out? That's just another way to contribute. Okay. I could give you 15 seconds, by the way, and say, is there anything on this list? Let's do this. 15 seconds. Is there anything on this list that could help you with something you could implement? 15 seconds. I think they get it right. Okay, so how about organizations? And you've been talking to us about what happens to your brain waves and heart rhythms and so on, but what happens to organizations? Well, as it turns out, not only do organizations do good, help people flourish, but they also do well. 20 years of research plus has discovered that when you implement positive practices, when you foster, create an abundance culture that is focusing on that virtuous side of the continuum, you will get, and so far, no disconfirming evidence. There's disconfirming evidence about almost anything. So far, no disconfirming evidence. Implement positive virtuous practices. You make more money. I'll show you just a minute if we have time. Productivity goes up. Quality goes up. Less waste, fewer errors. Innovation goes up. More creativity, more innovation. Customer satisfaction, customer loyalty, customer retention goes up. Employee engagement, employee retention. Now, that's what you're held accountable for. And sure enough, those things all go up. All right. I want to shift that quickly to leadership for me. In our research, I didn't want this to happen because there are 60,000 books on leadership on Amazon.com. Put in leadership, 60,000 books. Nobody reads that stuff. So I wanted something else to show up that was really more creative and innovative, but it wasn't. So as it turns out, leadership accounts for more variance in the outcome than anything else. Strategy matters, culture matters, processes matter, incentive systems matter, but all those in place, and you got an idiot for a leader, probably not going to work. Probably goes south. So leaders are by no means the only important factor, it's just that they're the most important factor. Well, who are the leaders? Turns out, normally we say, well, it's easy, Cameron, who's in the top box? If we draw an organization chart, the people in that top end of that chart are obviously the leaders. It's okay with me, but there are some alternatives. And one of the ways to draw a picture of an organization showing the alternatives is on the basis of a network map. Now, you know what a network map is. It's in the back of an airline magazine. Some cities at the hub, some in the periphery. You connect them with airline routes. You can do that in organizations, except people rather than cities or the nodes. Well, how do you connect people? Well, there's an entire field of study in sociology called network analysis. So there's some very common sense findings. One of them is, on the basis of information flows, who gives information to whom, who gets information to whom. You can create a network map based on information. And sure enough, no surprise, if you're at the hub or center of an information network, your performance is higher than the norm, as is the unit managed. Makes sense. If all the information comes through you, you know the secrets, you know what to share and what not to. You have an advantage, you're going to do better. An alternative is influence networks. Who influences whom? Who is influenced by whom? Again, no surprise, if you're at the center or hub of an information or an influence network, you're going to do better. Now, I don't know the percent for sure, but I'll bet 90% of leadership literature equates influence and leadership. If you're influential, of course, you're a leader. Okay with me. But there's a third option that turns out empirically to be very important. It has to do with energy. Who energizes whom? Who is energized by whom? Turns out that becomes a crucial factor. That is the positive energy of the leader. I want to show you an example of positive energy. I have a son who's committed his life, if he could get paid, he'd do that full time. He's committed his life to helping vulnerable children. So this is a picture of my son in a very destitute place in Zimbabwe. 40% of the students, these children will never make it to adulthood, starvation, disease, and so on. So he does a lot of things once a year. Excuse me. These kids walk to school 3 to 4 miles, 2 to 3 miles every day. The reason they do that is because they only eat 1 meal a day, and it's at school. They don't own shoes. If they need shoes, they flatten down a plastic bottle, put a string around their neck and around their ankle. That's what they walk on. Most have never seen a cell phone, and they certainly have never seen themselves in a cell phone. So look what happens when they see themselves for the very first time in their lives on a cell phone. Oh no, I know. You know what, Drew and I worked on this, and we thought we had a solve, but we didn't. Well, you can't see it. It's fine. Because we only have a few minutes. Bless your heart, thanks. What you see is these kids going crazy. Screaming and yelling and happy and jumping up and down. Oops. What was that? Drew, I better have you come down. The world revolves.
Exactly.
Oh, hot job. You and I worked on this. That's all right. Sure? Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. How many branches on this tree? A lot. How many faces are on this tree? 2. 11 faces. Now here's the point. You're not aware faces are on this tree until we point it out. Similarly, you're not aware energy, positive energy, is a crucial resource until we point it out. It exists. We just don't manage it. So there are several kinds of energy. Physical energy, which when I use it, it diminishes. Emotional energy, which when I use it, diminishes. I get exhausted. I gotta have recovery time. I get a heated argument or even cheer at the ballgame when Michigan beats Ohio State. We cheer like that. Mental energy, of course, we get exhausted at the end of the day. The only kind of energy that elevates with use is called relational energy. I mean, when you get exhausted by being around a person with whom you have a loving, supportive relationship, that's renewing. When you get exhausted in other ways, we seek out people who can lift us. So relational energy is the core. That's the key to helping organizations flourish. All right, very briefly, I only have a couple of minutes. This happens to be the network, positive energy network map of the New York office of a very famous consulting firm. If I told you who it was, you'd know. The way you do this is, we could do it in this room. I would hand around a piece of paper with everybody's name on it, and next to each name, I'd ask you to answer the question, when I interact with this person, what happens to my energy? When I interact with Sue, what happens to me? Am I elevated, uplifted, or is she exhausted and depleted? 1 to 7. 1, I'm exhausted. 7, very positively energized. So I'd have a data matrix, a bunch of numbers next to everybody's name. I'd put it in a statistical program. It would create a network map. That's how this gets produced. Okay. Look in the upper right-hand corner. The blue dots are the senior folks, the seed suite. They're called principals and directors here. The yellow dots are the newbies. They're the new analysts. They're the people working in the mailroom. They're the custodians. They're the lowest level hierarchy. Okay, hard to see. Look at this. You have some folks or senior execs who are not energizing anybody. On the other hand, look, you have a bunch of these junior level people who are giving life to the system. That is, lots of people are saying, man, when I interact with you, I'm uplifted and elevated. Position in a hierarchy and the extent to which you're energizer are not related. This happens to be the de-energizing network. These are the ones and twos, the people who suck the life right out of us. Again, look at all those blue dots in the middle. Just because you're a hotshot does not mean that you're life-giving to the organization. Excuse me. Now, there's lots more to say about this. This happens to be a study where we took everybody in a managerial role, collapsed them, called them supervisors. Everybody in a non-managerial role, collapsed them, called them non-supervisors. Then we simply did a network analysis of them, and this is the de-energizing network. This is the de-energizing network when you take out the managers. Goes away. We're doing fine, thank you very much, except for those hot dogs who are running the place. No, to their credit, they said, all right, we need a leadership development challenge on our hands. Would you help us? And we did. Because positive energizing is not personality. It's not inherent. It's not just being nice. It's a set of behaviors that anybody or everyone can learn. Positively energizing leadership is developable. And the best organizations I know have done it. I'm going to skip this. Positive energy, this is simply a study of a whole bunch of outcomes. This study was done in 40 organizations in financial services, where they simply rated the extent to which they had a positively energizing leader. And sure enough, those little statistical notations essentially there's very strong evidence that positively energizing leaders create job satisfaction, well-being, and performance, and family well-being. And this is not only an individual impact, but an organization impact. All right. This is the last slide I'll show you. The 20 years of research has suggested that these are conclusive, evidence-based statements. People who are positively energizing are higher performers themselves, rated that way in productivity measures. And here's the most important part of that study. Your position in the energy network is 4 times more important in predicting performance than your position in the information network or the influence network. Now think about that. We're always managing information. Did you come to the meetings? You get the memo, you understand the goals, and so on. We're always managing influence. Here's the incentive system. Here's your target. Get the numbers. The question is, does anybody ever manage energy? Does anybody ever get rewarded or recognized or hired or promoted for being a positive energizer? Because it's 4 times more important than what we normally manage. And most of the time, just like the faces on that tree, we don't even know it exists. and we certainly don't manage it. Second bullet. Positive energizers enhance the performance of others around them. No surprise, you kind of know those folks. Everybody's a little better because we get somebody who's a positive energizer. I've gotten to know a guy who's, I'm going to do this quickly. Shane Battier is from Michigan, played high school basketball, became high school player of the year in Michigan. And the biggest mistake of his life, he went to Duke, Michigan. Became college player of the year, best basketball player in the country. Of course, he was drafted in the NBA, National Basketball Association. He played for 3 teams. Every time he went to a new team, that team won 20 more games the next year. Battier only averaged, 10 points, 12 points a game, 6 or 7 rebounds a game. I mean, nothing. But the New York Times wrote an article about him entitled The No Stat All-Star, stacking statistics. Statistics for a whole home. But his last trade was to the Miami Heat, in which case they won the NBA championship 2 years in a row. Now this is, where this several years ago. Now granted, they had LeBron James at the time, this basketball player, Chris Bosh, perennial all-star, Dwayne Wade, perennial all-star. And of course, Battier was always on the floor. When Battier was playing, LeBron James scored more points per minute. Chris Bosh got more rebounds per minute. Dwayne Wade got more assists per minute when Battier was on the floor. I was listening to I very seldom do this, I was listening to the championship game, best of 7 series. Miami was playing, and they were up 3 games to 2. So if they won this game, they'd win an NBA championship. If they lost, they'd have to play game 7. They were behind 2 points. 10 seconds to go. Ball comes into LeBron James. Now look, everybody on the planet knew this hero, the best basketball player in the country, was going to take the last shot. So double team, triple team. Dribbles, finally gets across half court. 5, 4. No look pass. Over in the corner. Battier's there, catches the ball, steps behind the 3-point line, launches the shot, buzzer goes off, swish. Wins the game, wins the championship, crowd goes wild, everybody's screaming, all the press run out on the floor, put microphones in front of LeBron James and say, wow, congratulations. But wait a minute, that last play, we thought you were going to take the last shot. And a no-look pass? How'd you know Battier was here? And he said, LeBron James said, I didn't. But Battier is always in the right place. It could have been a turnover. I could have thrown it out of bounds. No stat all-star. You know those folks. Positively energizing people who have everybody else in shine. Okay. Highest performing organizations have at least 3 times more positive energizers than normal organizations. Anyone can be one. It's not just the folks at the top. Up and down the hierarchy, better organizations have more positive energizers. My summary statement. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, become more, that's a positive energizing leader. Now I'm over time. But do you have comments, questions, yabbas? Sue's can answer.
So I almost just want to